Guys, what's up? So in this video, I'm going to be covering why it is that I switched to a meal plan about 3 weeks out from my pro debut. So essentially how this would work is when my coach would send me my macros for that week, I would simply adjust the amounts of the foods that I had already plugged into my FitnessPal for each meal for that day. And I would just eat these same meals every day. So it was 5 meals a day. There are 5 main reasons why I decided to do this, and in retrospect, I do think it was a good idea. I do think it helped me both psychologically and physiologically. So the first reason is that I simply got less cravings and less hunger when I was on the meal plan. Now this might seem counterintuitive to some of you guys who have been familiar with the research on flexible dieting versus rigid control strategies and all that kind of stuff, where typically we find that the more flexible a diet is, the more that tends to be associated with success in terms of weight control. It isn't as cut and dry as if you follow flexible dieting, you won't get cravings or you won't be tempted to overeat or anything like that. That probably will work for some people, and this has been pretty well fleshed out in the literature, where you find that some people are way more responsive to food cues, particularly foods that they enjoy. Some people who, say, deprive themselves of a specific food that they're known to be cravers of will crave it even more if they're deprived of it. And then on the other hand, you have people who, when given just a little taste of that food, it's a sufficient enough of a reward for them to want even more of it. And then this can be exacerbated by what's come to be known as the to hell with it effect. So essentially, you know what, I've already had this Reese cup, my diet's kind of already off track, I might as well just overeat on this. I think I fall into the camp where I'm more sensitive to food cues, and when I get that little taste, I tend to crave it even more, especially as I get lower and lower below my set point and push my body to limits that it doesn't really want to go to. And I would say that the majority of the bodybuilding population also applies to this. Sure, there are certainly some people who can just have that little taste and then that satisfies them and they don't have that desire to eat more and more. For me, I found that my cravings were better controlled by simply just restricting these foods. It also worked in terms of hunger, since the foods that I tend to want to eat more are the foods that have less satiating power. And so reason number 2 is that it basically just freed up a whole bunch of time for me to do stuff that I actually wanted to do. So as I was nearing the end of my prep, I found that I was spending a lot of time inputting foods into my FitnessPal or trying to plan out my meals so that they would be exactly what I wanted at that time. And so what I found was by having this set structure throughout the day, I was able to take that time that I would normally spend, putting foods into my FitnessPal and use it to do more productive things. If you don't want to go the full meal plan route, you can do what I was doing for a while, which is just bracket your day with the same meals. So I would have the same breakfast and then the same bedtime meal, and then in between those 2 meals, I would fill it in, with foods that I enjoyed or was feeling at that particular point in time. And that can give you a little bit of structure in terms of, consistency from day to day and getting your day started right and ending the day right, and then also allow for that little bit of flexibility in between. So reason number 3 is increased performance in the gym. So we're all probably pretty familiar with the idea that nutrient timing around the workout is relatively unimportant when compared to things like total macronutrient intake for the day and actually training properly and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think anyone would argue that it isn't important at all. And I think that if there is an effect of timing your nutrients around your workout, which there almost definitely is, then this effect is probably greater and greater the leaner you get, since you just simply don't have that much energy to go around. And so timing things like your pre-workout meal becomes that much more important. You're essentially limited to the amount of energy that you took in that meal when it comes to your training sessions. So the timing of those and the choice of the foods becomes increasingly important, I think, the deeper you get into prep. You don't have to have a meal plan in order to have, you know, a proper pre-workout meal. You can do that completely flexibly. But for me, it became a matter of actually ensuring that I would do that. And I do know from speaking to other flexible dieters that sometimes we tend to not quite have the self-restraint that we think we do, or we wish we had. And sometimes we'll overeat on foods that, you know, aren't satiating or don't give us that sustained level of energy that we want in a pre-workout meal. Peri-workout nutrition shouldn't be at the top of your priority list, especially if you're someone who's doing this for, like, let's say lifestyle reasons, or you just want to put on some muscle or lose a bit of fat. You can absolutely achieve those goals without worrying about nutrition pre-workout or post-workout. However, when you want to take advantage of every little bit of muscle and every little bit of fat loss that you can, I think that these are tools that can come into play. So reason number 4 is sort of another mental thing, and that is just more consistency with my weigh-ins. Even though I fully know, and I say to my clients all the time, that what we're looking for is the general downward trend or upward trend if you're gaining. We shouldn't concern ourselves with little fluctuations along the way. When you're actually there in the trenches, especially towards the end of prep, it can be a little bit frustrating when you see, you know, your weight spike up 2 or 3 pounds and you're just wondering what's going on there. And it's also a way of sort of honing in on the data that you are collecting in terms of your individual weigh-ins and getting them to be a little bit more precise towards the end of your prep. So what I found to be useful in this sense is keeping my sodium somewhat stable by following the meal plan. Also, different foods have different weights. So, you know, foods that are very high volume are probably going to weigh more. They might have a greater impact on your next day weigh-in than if you ate, say, you know, very low volume, low residue type foods. And if this varies from day to day, then your weight is obviously going to vary from day to day too. This doesn't actually have any long-term impact. Whether you eat high volume foods or low volume foods, or your sodium goes up and down, this isn't going to actually impact on fat loss over the long term. It might impact on your look to some degree due to water fluctuations. But for me, this was more of a psychological thing and a pragmatic thing in terms of being able to report my weigh-ins most accurately and consistently. And then the 5th reason is kind of just a personal reason, but it sort of made me feel like a bodybuilder again. There's something just about eating foods that bodybuilders eat or historically have eaten that I just found motivating. You know, while I do enjoy, you know, the occasional snack and all that kind of stuff, I think that my roots sort of lie in the chicken and rice type meals and with the sweet potato and that kind of stuff. And so it felt good to get back to that. And what it reminded me of was, you know, what I went through and what I was able to push through earlier in my bodybuilding career. And so it sort of served as a daily reminder that, you know, I've done this before, and so I'll be able to do it again. And then also it just sort of made me nostalgic for my old preps. I loved competing. I still love competing. I love bodybuilding. I love the journey to the stage. And, you know, certain foods can sort of elicit this nostalgia, and then I found I was able to kind of harness that and then use that as a motivator for me. That's why I switched to a meal plan. There's nothing magic about meal plans. There's nothing special about any of these foods that you guys saw me eating. It was simply just a matter of improving my adherence, improving my performance, and then also just kind of making me feel as good as I could that close to the show. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did enjoy the video, hit the like button for me. Do subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks again for watching. In the next video, I'll be showing you guys some training footage, and I'll be covering in quite a bit of detail my plans for the upcoming off season. All right, thanks again, guys, and I'll see you next time.